Hello everyone, and welcome back. As for now, we are going to discuss about none other than Frank Underwood, the main protagonist of House of Cards. A diabolical politician willing to do anything and sacrifice and murder anybody to achieve his own goals, Frank Underwood is by far one of the most realistic and most evil villains in television history, as people like him sadly are and were a reality. And the best example I have at the moment, and don't be mad, but that best example is Donald Trump. And in this episode, we are going to analyze all that we know about him throughout the series to understand Frank Underwood and his rise and fall of to the presidency. And now, let's begin. Francis Joseph Underwood was born in Gaffney, South Carolina on November 5, 1959, and grown up on a farm where his father was a farmer and was very horrible and abusive to him. But thankfully for him, the father has passed away while Frank was a teenager. And growing up, he managed to enter into Harvard in order to study the law, and he there met his future wife, Claire Hale Underwood, and they both got together after they both graduated from Harvard in 1984 and officially married in 1987. But they never had children as Francis knew that he would be a horrible father. And soon Frank has officially become joined the Democratic Party and became the representative in the Congressional District of South Carolina in 1990, a position which he held until 2012. He even became Democratic Party whip in 2005 and served as House Majority Whip from 2005 to 2013. And now, Frank has officially gained a much interest into becoming President of the United States. And in order to do so, he needed to get into league with Garrett Walker, who was candidating for presidency, in which he has to manipulate his way to power. First, by officially trying to become the Secretary of State under Walker's future administration, but when the post was already taken by someone else, now Frank managed to manipulate those around him in order to gain the advantage. By instigating a scandal in which the current appointee for the Secretary of State has made a bad statement about Israel, which resulted in Walker firing him and replacing him with Underwood himself, and thus propelling himself closer and closer to the presidency. And soon, a pawn has arrived in his game, and that being a journalist, Zoe Barnes, in which he has entered into a relationship with consensually and with his wife knowing about that, and used her in order to gain more advantage and spread more propaganda and humiliate his political opponents. But as Zoe eventually found out the truth about him and his true colors, Frank had no choice but to horrifically and remorselessly kill her by throwing her in front of a bus. And now he officially came to plot to become the vice president pick for Walker in the upcoming 2012 election. And so he officially manipulated the governor of Pennsylvania, Peter Russo, and officially had him killed in order to make the current VP pick for Walker to officially renounce him and to officially going to candidate as governor for Pennsylvania as he always wanted. And now with the position as running mate for the upcoming election being open, Frank Underwood officially took it and he officially began to candidate with Walker, and together they officially won the 2012 election, and thus Walker has become the 45th President of the United States, with Frank as his Vice President, and now he officially came closer and closer to officially achieve his goals, in officially becoming the future US President, as by 2014, to do a scandal with an education bill that created the largest teacher strike in US history, Walker had no choice but to resign, and just like Richard Nixon did 40 years prior, and like Gerald Ford did prior as well, the Frank has officially taken advantage of the situation and he became the 46th President of the United States, finally achieving his long life goal and propelling himself to the presidency. And throughout his term as president, Frank has initiated an American Works Jobs program which lasted only for several months until it was defunded by Congress. He also negotiated with Russia to relinquish his hold over Jordan Valley, and for that he officially fired his own wife, who was the US representative at the UN, in order to officially appease the Russians, which only created more problems with Claire in the process. He also passed the gun control bill, which got inspired after his assassination attempt, and soon, by 2016, he officially came to candidate for a one term in his own right and picked his own wife Claire to be his running mate. And now, before we continue, we will now stop and ask ourselves, is Frank evil? And the reason why I'm asking is while it's an undeniable fact that he's a horrible person, he should be noted here that Frank does has a tragic backstory, being abused by his father, which led to him becoming the person who he is today. However, even with all of this, is not an excuse for all the horrible things he's doing. Even if had a Frank literally manipulated, used, and murdered people, even innocent, in order to achieve his goals. As well as, and why could be also noted here that Frank doesn't seek to take over America as a dictator or to rule the world. He only seeks to become president to have some sort of a legacy for himself and the nation. However, even this doesn't excuse him, as while he doesn't seek to become a dictator like Trump now tries in real life. It should be noted here that Frank is doing nothing better than him. As given the fact that Frank Underwood has proved to me that he is nothing more but a pure evil psychopath who genuinely cares for no one but himself. And he doesn't even care about his wife Claire, and only uses her in order to advance his own political career. If she would have been against him or useless, he would have either divorced her or even outright killed her, if it was necessary. And as proving that the answer is the ultimate yes. Frank Underwood is undeniably evil. And after eventually he did won the 2016 election and gained a second term, as well as with Claire now as his VP. But by March 2017, there was a massive scandal that started at the White House due to the fact that some, if not most of his crimes were discovered. And so in order to save face, Frank has officially resigned as president just like Walker before him, and Claire has become the 47th US president, and with himself becoming his first gentleman. And soon by May, Frank has officially been poisoned and killed in the process. And thus Frank Underwood has finally died at the age of 57, being buried back in South Carolina next to his father and becoming immortalized as one of the worst presidents in American history. So in the end, who was Frank Underwood? He was nothing more but a diabolical psychopath who only wanted power and glory in his own name, a master that will do anything and sacrifice anybody and everything to achieve his own goals of absolute power, and a master that could easily be called as one of the most realistic and most evil villains ever made in television. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give a like and subscribe, and have a nice day.